Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a really fascinating deep dive today. We're going to explore the sheer survival of ordinary villages during the absolutely chaotic Sengoku period. Specifically, we'll be tracking the story of Aoki Village from the old Urano order all the way to the famous Sanada clan.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear the word Sengoku period, what immediately pops into your head? You probably picture famous warlords in shining armor, massive armies clashing, and epic, bloody battles reshaping the entire map of Japan, right? And you wouldn't be wrong. But today we're flipping that perspective. While massive political upheavals were tearing the country apart, a completely different reality was playing out for ordinary people in places like Aoki Village.
Now, you literally can't talk about this region without acknowledging the legendary fame of the Sanada clan. Just to the east of Aoki Village, in Ueda, this powerhouse family was rising to national prominence. You've got massive historical figures like Sanada Masayuki, Nobuyuki, and the absolute legend Nobushige, better known to history as Sanada Yukimura. But instead of focusing on these famous warlords today, we're going to pivot. We're zooming into the unnamed everyday people who actually lived through these turbulent regime changes right next door. To really understand their world, we actually have to step back in time, well before Sanada Masayuki ever laid the first stone of Ueda Castle. Before the Sanada took control, the Aoki area was part of a much older, firmly established regional order known as the Urano-sho. This was a medieval estate system deeply connected to local warriors known as the Urano clan. This wasn't just some empty wilderness waiting to be conquered by famous samurai. It was a deeply rooted, highly structured society.
Now, what's really interesting about these records is the remarkable continuity. These medieval names, Tazawa, Nakabasa, Muramatsu, Ogami, and Tonoto, were recorded back in 1578 and 1579 during the construction of the Suwa Taisha shrine. And incredibly, these are the exact same village communities that exist in modern-day Aoki Village. For the people living there, these weren't just dots on a map. They were places to farm, share water, support local shrines, and just live their everyday lives. The documents from 1579 give us some incredible specifics, too. They explicitly name active administrators tied to the Urano clan who were managing these villages. Over in Muramatsu, we have Urano-mondo-no-suke and Tajima no Kami. In Ogami, there's a local administrator named Urano-shirobe. This is hard evidence proving that a stable, organized local society existed in Aoki Village just 4 years before Ueda Castle was even built. The local machinery of life was fully functioning. However, these local villages couldn't just ignore the macro politics swirling around them. The 16th century was a brutal time, and Aoki Village was geographically caught right in the crossfire. First, the Murakami clan held a ton of influence. Then, the fearsome Takeda Shingen invaded from Kai, which drastically altered the political landscape. And eventually, under the shadow of the Takeda, the Sanada clan began to rise. Every single time the ruler changed, the villagers had to adapt to new tax systems, new military burdens, and brand new overlords. Let's move forward and see how this builds, because by 1582, the world had essentially collapsed for this region. The massive Takeda clan was suddenly wiped out. Shortly after that, the Honnoji incident happens, resulting in the shocking death of Oda Nobunaga. In an incredibly short window, the entire political order was thrown into complete chaos. Factions fought over the remnants of the Takeda territory, and it was this exact chaos that perfectly paved the way for Sanada Masayuki to consolidate his power and start building Ueda Castle in 1583. Now you might be wondering, did the Sanada actually fight directly in Aoki Village? Well, historical records don't give us absolute proof of direct battles there, but geography reveals exactly why Aoki was so important. It wasn't just some remote, isolated mountain village, it was a vital crossroads. Historically, roads crossing the Hofukuji Pass connected the Ueda Basin to the Matsumoto Basin. This meant Aoki Village was an essential thoroughfare right through the mountains, placing it directly in the middle of these massive historical shifts. And this brilliantly illustrates a really profound transformation. Think about it. In 1579, Ogami is managed under the old regional order. But by 1608, a sweeping territory ledger created under the Sanada clan's rule officially lists Ogami as part of their Ueda territory. That 29-year gap is just packed with war, collapsed empires, and massive political upheaval. So the crucial point is that in that 1608 ledger, Ogami isn't just mentioned in passing. It's recorded with a highly specific tax figure, 214 kan
and 768 mon, the currency and tax measurements of the time. This specific number visually anchors the abstract history of the Sengoku period into cold, hard, documented fact. It proves the Sanada clan had deeply integrated this ancient village into their brand new political and economic system.
And the ledger certainly doesn't stop with Ogami. We get undeniable proof of life for neighboring villages too. Tonoto is recorded with a tax burden of over 101 kan, and Kutsukake is recorded at 35 kan. These communities still exist today. The Sanada didn't just conquer an empty map. They inherited, organized, and taxed a network of deeply rooted, living communities that firmly predated the rise to power. I want you to take a second and just imagine a single, unnamed villager living in Ogami during this time. 29 years is just one human lifetime. Imagine a young farmer in 1579. Within their lifetime, they would have known the old Urano order, witnessed this shocking collapse of the mighty Takeda clan, heard crazy rumors of Oda Nobunaga's death, watched this Sanada rise to power, and eventually grown old in a village taxed by Ueda Castle. They literally lived through an entire textbook's worth of history in just a few decades. It's wild to think about. Now, as with all historical research, it's not always a perfect one-to-one match. While we clearly see Ogami, Tonoto, and Kutsukake in the 1608 ledger, other 1579 names like Tazawa, Nakabasa, and Naramoto are a bit trickier to trace exactly. Over time, villages split, they merged, or they were recorded under different regional groupings. But listen, the lack of a direct name match in one specific ledger absolutely doesn't mean the village disappeared. The underlying communities continuously endured, adapting to whatever administrative box the new rulers put them in. Which brings us to the most incredible part of this explainer, the immovable stability of the villagers. While warlords were busy betraying each other, fighting massive battles, and assuming they were reshaping the world, the unnamed locals just kept the world running. Through it all, the fields were still tilled, the mountains were still utilized for wood and resources, families were still raised, and harsh, snowy winters were continuously survived. The macro history is all about change, but the micro history? It's about absolute endurance. This perfectly summarizes the core takeaway for us today. The Sengoku period wasn't just a history of famous samurai and grand castles. It was, fundamentally, a story of incredible local resilience. The new domains of famous warlords like the Sanada were quite literally built upon the foundation of these ancient, pre-existing local communities. The rulers change, but the village continues. So I want to leave you with this thought. The history we read in books is written by the victors, sure, but the land itself remembers the survivors. The next time you walk through a place like modern Aoki Village or hear those ancient place names like Ogami and Tonoto, will you see the invisible footprints of the people who quietly outlasted the warlords? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating hidden history with me today. Keep asking questions and always try to look past the castles to see the people.